Hey everybody, KMO here, and this week it's not just me jabbering at you. I've got Jim D, your ad attacker, on Zoom, although I can't see his face because he's using antiquated technology. Jim D.
Nothing wrong with antiquated technology, man.
No, it's appropriate technology. It's technology that's paid for and still works.
The steam is a little irritating, but yeah.
Well, if you need to stop and crank it or, wind up the rubber band, just let me know. So,
the clicking will be a coin going into the slot.
Benny Rubber in the chat says, Benny Rubber baby buggy bumper stickers. Excellent. Oh, it's hot in the studio. I'll be swigging on this non-alcoholic adult beverage. Actually, I suppose a child could drink it. There's nothing adult about it.
I was going to say, what aspect of non-alcoholic or adult is contradictory here? Well, of course, it could be a cannabis beverage. I don't know. I'm out of that loop.
It's not.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all right. No, I'm on a budget-imposed cannabis hiatus.
Yes. I imagine, once it goes legal, the price goes up. It's weird how that works out. It's the market, I'm sure.
Actually, it's not entirely. I mean, if I wanted to prioritize it, I could come up with some cheddar for it, but it was the price that drove me away, and it's, I guess, just the satisfaction of clean living that keeps me away. So I'm going to call up a Bitcoin price chart. You won't be able to see it, or will you? I could share my screen, and then you would see it. I'm going to make good use of this technology. Here we go.
I guess I could also go to the live stream itself.
Now, you'd have to remember to mute.
I can do that.
Well, I'm going to screen share.
All right.
There we go. We are screen sharing. Bitcoin chart. All righty. Actually, if you were on the live stream right now, you'd just see my beautiful face, my freshly trimmed beard. All right, here we go. Coinbase, oh my goodness. I'm not logging in. No, I don't want Coinbase. Let's see. Oh, the Zoom controls get in the way. There we go. That was my fault. I should have looked at what I was clicking on. How about this? Just bitcoin.com. So, all you know of Bitcoin is what you've heard from me in my podcast ranting, yes?
Not all, but you've caught me up on the recent kerfuffle with the Muskie one.
Yeah. Well, he's not the only bad actor here. And in fact,
he can't be. He doesn't have that much money.
Right. Well, he's got outsized influence for sure on Twitter. Sigma 666 is in the chat. All right, let's get this out of here.
That's funny.
Alrighty, so the new year begins here. Bitcoin's at what, around $400? That can't be right. Is this Bitcoin? No, this is Bitcoin Cash. Go away, Bitcoin Cash. You're nothing. You are a distraction. Only thing worse is Bitcoin SV.
What is the difference, if I might ask?
So there was what's called a fork. You know, people in an organization, they disagree about the direction their coin should take. And so they fork it. And, you know, people who want it one way, they get it one way. People who want it the other, they get it another. And Bitcoin Cash is just, nobody buys it. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't really drop when the market drops because it's not doing anything. It's just there.
They got forked.
Yeah, but there's one worse. There's one called Bitcoin SV for Satoshi's Vision. And if we were to log into my Coinbase account, you would see that I have about $65 worth of those, which I would sell off in an instant if Coinbase actually supported it. But they don't. They'll let it sit there in my account doing nothing, but they won't let me sell it, at least from their platform. Alrighty. Oh, I've lost the chat. Wake up. All right, we'll just take the one that Yahoo. Why is this set to Yahoo? Goodness. How about year to date?
Okay, I have a problem right away. Let me see. Does that chart go all the way down to 0?
Probably not, no.
Yeah, that's an economist friend of mine told me the easiest way to make a chart look more drastic is to set it above 0. So the peaks and the valleys are accentuated.
Well, it's pretty drastic. What do we got going on here?
Screen capture broke.
Screen capture broke. Alrighty.
Hello,
Call it the techie.
He's very professional about it. He's like, leaning in from off camera. You can just see a little tuft of hair, tip of his nose.
Try that.
I see an eyeball.
All right. So I know what you're saying about charts that don't show the full range. They just show you what's happening at the top, and it looks more dramatic. But here, look at this. Bitcoin was up here at 63,000 for one coin back on April 13th, and here it is today at 33,000. So it is
falling.
Yeah, it has lost almost half its value. Now it's not falling dramatically like it was here from May 13th down to May 19th. That was a bad week for the hodlers.
Yeah, that looks like one of the Aztec pyramid steps.
The kind where you've just had your heart torn out and your body is being thrown down the steps.
And they don't want the body to stop on the way down.
Nope. Alrighty, so how low will it go? And I actually watch quite a few YouTubers who have fancy accounts, fancy graphics that, they can draw all kinds of lines on it and put up Fibonacci ranges and, invoke the Wyckoff pattern and, overlay all these different known, graph movement patterns.
Well, you got to have toys. I mean, come on.
Well, these guys are all trying to talk their viewers, talk them down off the ledge right now.
Yeah, most of them are jumping as fast as they can, it looks like. Now, let me get this straight. You kind of gave me the recap, so I'll give the recap for everybody who's watching and maybe hasn't heard about this. Everything's cooking along at 60,000 plus, right?
Yeah.
And then suddenly, somebody notes that a lot of the whales, a lot of the big holders are slow. They're selling this, they're selling that, they're selling this and that. And then, after the whales start slowly draining their own accounts, Elon Musk comes out and says, screw it. We're not going to take Bitcoin, it's dangerous, blah, blah, blah. Is that about right?
That's good. I'm going to add a little bit of detail.
Okay.
And the detail is that the whales bought in a big way. When we say whales, we're talking about big institutional investors, people playing with other people's money. People for whom $50, $100 million is no big thing. Mm-hmm. And they started to buy in a big way in the last quarter, really in November of 2020.
Okay.
And the price went up, accordingly. And then in around February and March, they started to sell out. But the price didn't fall. Mm-hmm. And the price didn't fall because that dramatic upward movement brought in the retail
FOMO crowd.
Yes. The FOMO crowd who thought, oh, I got to get a piece of that.
That's very broken.
I have not been paying attention to it. That's all right. We don't need to see it anymore. I have not been paying attention to this thing, but I hear that the value is going through the roof. Let me put my retirement savings into it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so the whales had pulled out. The new money from the retail investors was coming in and sustaining the price at that high. And then Elon Musk says, and then Tesla Motors says, oh, we were taking payment for our cars in Bitcoin. No more. We will no longer accept it accept it as payment for our cars because it's environmentally unfriendly.
Said Tesla Motors.
Tesla Motors, yes. And that sort of started the panic. And yes, then Elon, a different Twitter account mentioned that Tesla had probably sold off their Bitcoin, or they were about to. And Elon Musk commented on that person's tweet with one word. He said, indeed.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we were not buying Bitcoin, but actually, I don't know, Xerox or Kodak or, think back to the old-timey stocks when companies made these things called products.
Mm-hmm.
They would have been regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And had Elon Musk said, indeed, he would have immediately gotten in trouble with the Securities and Exchange Commission in a very large and felonious way.
As he has in the past.
As he has in the past. But Bitcoin is essentially nothing. It is code. It is someone is using electricity in the size of, at the same rate as the country of Norway, and nothing is being produced except for the ledgering, the accounting of this exchange medium. So the Securities and Exchange Commission has absolutely nothing to do with them. He can cheat people legally, which has got to be a huge, I don't know what you would call it, profitable venture.
So our mutual friend and listener to both of our podcasts, Leet Minion, he wrote to me, and I haven't read his email or his comment on a podcast yet. But he's of the opinion that while there is certainly manipulation going on behind the scenes here for cold, mercenary, profit-oriented reasons, mm-hmm. Elon Musk just might be playing. He just might be the trickster here. He's not necessarily playing with the same motivations as the whales. He's just doesn't give two fucks. He's just playing with dynamite for the fun of it.
Yeah, and again, the dynamite with which he is tossing is perfectly legal to toss.
Well, here's the thing. He can even
say, yeah, I took a huge cash. What are you going to do about it, huh?
The reason people are interested in Bitcoin is because it's possible for the value to double in a couple of months.
Right.
But for it to be volatile like that, you got to be prepared for the reverse. The value
With
can
great,
go to.
with great promise come great risks. Yes, indeed,
Exactly.
absolutely. I mean, this happened back in when the stock market crashed originally in '29. It was something called the dead cat bounce. The market opened, it closed horribly on Thursday, and they just shut it down for Friday. And they said, "Okay, we'll open Monday." Nobody anticipated the sell orders would be matched by zero buy orders, and it just crashed to the floor. And there was panic, panic, panic. Everything ground to a halt, and then suddenly there was an infusion of capital from J.P. Morgan and his buddies. Yay, it's coming back. And so people bought back in, and then Morgan pulled out, which is something the history books do not reflect. It was well known at the time from insiders working with J.P. Morgan, and it was talked about by people such as Upton Sinclair, but it was not something that made the paper because J.P. Morgan still had a lot of cash and a lot of clout, and this was before Securities and Exchange Commission, what's the word, existed. So they were able to do what Musk is doing today, or at least which he is intoning that he could do legally if he wanted to.
Hikane asks in the chat, do I have any reason to believe Musk is intentionally manipulating the market and it just sharing his thoughts on Twitter? I think that's probably an or. Or is it just sharing, or is he just sharing his thoughts on Twitter? He's super rich. You know?
I am not an investigator in any official capacity. I am talking out my ass.
But he's a very rich man. Apparently his company, I mean, it's not apparently, his company bought $1 billion worth of Bitcoin last year. Why he would want to drive down the value of that asset that his company was and still is holding, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It could be that he's just being the trickster. You know, when he got in trouble with the Security and Exchange Commission, it was for a tweet in which he said that he was going to take Tesla private, that he had already lined up, private investment he had already lined up the financing to do it, and they were going to do it at $420 a share.
Mm-hmm.
420.
Oh, yeah, that sounds low.
Right. No, it's the marijuana code number.
Oh.
It was a joke.
Yeah, okay.
It was a joke. He thought he was being funny, but the price of Tesla stock skyrocketed, and the SEC said, you can't do that.
Yeah, because they have zero sense of sarcasm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 420. What I think it was the California Highway Patrol code for possession of marijuana.
I think that's been debunked.
Okay.
It is a mystery. The origin of that number is a mystery.
Oh.
There are many theories.
I sit corrected.
Hikani says, in his defense, he has Asperger's. I don't think the SEC really cares about that.
Yep.
All righty. Well, that's probably enough about Bitcoin.
Okay.
Actually, there is one other piece I want to throw out. So there's an annual Bitcoin convention, and it happened in Florida last week at a time when all the Bitcoin people are in emotional turmoil. And the president of El Salvador, I don't know if he Skyped in or Zoomed in or whatever, but he wasn't there personally, but he did appear, via whatever. And he told the assembled Bitcoin enthusiasts that he is introducing legislation into the legislature of his country to make Bitcoin legal tender in El Salvador.
Oh, God.
Well, you know what the El Salvador currency is, right?
The dollar?
It is the U.S. dollar, yes.
Yes.
So El Salvador has no control over its own currency. But Bitcoin, with its wild volatility, I don't see how it can possibly serve. I don't see how you could possibly buy milk and bread and eggs and beer with it.
I don't see how people in El Salvador, okay, I'm going to go out on a bit of a rant here. All right. The European Union was formed, 92 or something, under the Maastricht Treaty, and everybody wanted to do this because it would be something that would bring Europe together. They wanted to encourage trade across borders in order to present the liberal idea of freedom, okay? They realized that people warring each other don't trade. Therefore, people that trade won't war each other. That's kind of the mentality post-World War II behind the Maastricht Treaty and the Eurozone and the EU and all of that other stuff. Okay. What they never did was give anybody who signed that treaty a graceful way of leaving. So these people, these polities, these countries, these independent nations used to have their own currency. There was the drachma in Greece. There was the Deutschmark in Germany. The list goes on, blah, blah, blah. All of them switched to the euro. However, there was more than just a coin behind this. There was a legislature or a parliament. There were treasury officials. There were people who could inflate the currency and deflate the currency as needed in order to promote trade and protect the country. Once you've got the Eurozone, you have no way of controlling the currency. You are at the whims of the strongest players, which are France and Germany. It doesn't matter how many vats of Greek yogurt you sell. You are not going to sell enough to make up for the purchase of Mercedes-Benzes. Period. You can buy all the French wine you want, but if you're only selling grapes, you're at a disadvantage. A trade is only balanced when the amount of currency flows back and forth equally, and they can't do that.
Yep.
So the housing crisis came down, and all of these, what they called the pigs, the Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Greece, and Spain, they were stuck because they had no ability to pay back the loans that they floated their bonds for because they couldn't change their currency. It was stuck by the Eurozone. And Yanis Varoufakis was appointed the Minister of Finance, I believe, in Greece, and he brought in the people from Germany, from Deutsche Bank and the EU, from Brussels, and he says, look, the voters have said we don't want austerity. And the people from the EU said, well, that doesn't matter. You have to pay back your loans. And Yanis Varoufakis said, well, then we're not a democracy, are we? And he was met with silence, with crickets. And he shortly thereafter resigned his position after fighting this unfightable battle, completely unwinnable battle. If you as a country don't have control over your currency, you are not a sovereign nation. Suck it up, people. That's the fact. Rant closed.
All right. Sounded like you were channeling a little bit of Mark Blythe there.
Oh, I love Mark Blythe. I do indeed.
He's
Little
the-
Steve Keen, a little Mark Blythe, a little Ellen Brown. Yeah, there's all kinds of background to that rant.
He's the author of a book called, Austerity, The History of a Dangerous Idea.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes. This is where we learned that the hyperinflation of the Weimar German government did not result in Hitler. Excuse me. The hyperinflation was deliberate. They deliberately inflated their currency because after the treaty was signed, France invaded again and took over a place called the Ruhr Valley, which I guess had a lot of coal and steel and stuff. And they were paying their people in there in real money. So they hyperinflated the currency, and suddenly they had to match, France had to match the amount of money they were paying for their employees, and suddenly, wait, they couldn't. Because they're not converting. They wanted the people to be paid in real dollars. Well, the Weimar government took all that money from the French companies that were operating the Ruhr Valley to the point where it almost bankrupted, then they had to pull out. That was exactly what they wanted to happen. In 1923, a few tweaks were made to the what's called the seigniorage, the list of what debts get paid first. And in the case of Germany, the seigniorage was the first debt paid. Investment debts had to follow the reparations debts. So once they reversed that and they allowed investors to get paid before reparations, a lot of money poured into Germany. And that was called the Roaring Twenties in Berlin. And a lot of that money came from the US, and everything was fine. And nobody cared about Hitler. Nobody cared about the Nazis until 29, when the crash came and all the investors pulled out their money. Okay, now we have, let me see, Finance Minister Heinrich Brüning, who comes in and says, we must invoke austerity to pay back the reparations, and suddenly Hitler got popular. Austerity led to Hitler, not hyperinflation.
All right.
That's what I learned from Mark Blythe's book.
And just for some color, the Roaring Twenties in Berlin. This is the setting for the musical and the film Cabaret.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Which
Where,
I still have it a closed package and I haven't opened it. The friend just gave me, here, have this copy. They sent me two. Oh, okay.
I saw a live performance on stage here
Nice.
here in Vermont a couple years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And
I,
either I had never seen the movie or it had been so long the details were fuzzy for me. So it was, it wasn't like, going to see an onstage presentation of your favorite Simpsons episode.
I actually saw something like that. There's an artist who can do almost all the voices of The Simpsons, and he put together a Macbeth,
Oh,
and
wow.
he called it McHomer. And he does almost all the voices beautifully. I've seen it twice. It's a wonderful thing. But it's only one person. He needs somebody else to do Bart because his voice just can't do Bart.
Yeah, well, the Simpsons tradition is you have Lisa Cartwright. Like you have people like Dan Castellaneta and Harry Shearer who are doing a dozen voices each, and then you have Lisa Cartwright doing just Bart
Lisa.
and who am I thinking of? Who's Bart? Who does Bart?
The same woman who does Nelson and Millhouse and most of the young boys.
Right.
I can't remember her name. Lisa Cartwright, or no, what's her name? Linda Cartwright?
Gotta go to the
I don't know.
IMDb here. Voice
Well,
of Lisa Simpson. But anyway, yeah, she does one voice. She does the voice of Lisa. Yardley
Right.
Smith.
Yeardley Smith. Linda Cartwright probably does Bart and Millhouse and Nelson.
Yeah. So Yardley Smith. She is the one-trick pony that is Lisa Simpson, but we love her. So Ben Rubber asks, have y'all heard of Helena Norberg Harge's perspective on globalist economic bull? Wrote "Local is our future" in recent years, describing WTO and IMF ticker. I may have interviewed her. I can't remember now. I mean, she's certainly a familiar name, from the like curmudgeonly economics crowd and the sort of local future permaculture leaning crowd. Ben Rubber also writes, Jason Hickel is another, wrote The Divide. And here's a link to Helena Norberg Hodge's book. Gosh, I want to see her face. That'll tell me if I've interviewed her. When you get up to several hundred episodes of interviews, they get kind of fuzzy. Let's see. Local is our future. I should bring it up on this computer. Oh, right. I can't do that. Let's see. Local is our future. All right. It is loading. Colin, if you would. Share the screen. Local is our future. We're dedicated to present Helena Norberg Hodge's latest book, Local is Our Future. This book connects the dots between our social, economic, ecological, and spiritual crises, revealing how a systemic shift from global to local can address these seemingly disparate problems simultaneously. Distilling the wisdom gleaned from 4 decades of activism into direct experience in both global north and south, Helena lucidly deconstructs the old narrative of progress through technological advance and corporate growth, while presenting a concise and compelling case for economic localization. Hey, Colin, throw this up on screen, man. Oh, still broken. Screen share is broken. All right. Her arguments are supported by real-world examples proving that beneath the radar of the mainstream media and far from the fetishized techno-utopia of Silicon Valley, healthy and vibrant futures built upon connection to nature and community are already in the making. Well, that sounds like a very familiar refrain, anyway, particularly coming from localfutures.org.
Yeah, I think you've had 17 guests who have articulated that position.
But she might have been one of them. I just don't remember. Anyway.
She has one of those 3-name names. Mm-hmm. It should be easy, but it isn't.
All right. Actually, I've just got to. I was going to say Google, but they don't have Google set up as the default search here. There we are. Let's see what she looks like. I mean, if I interviewed her on Skype, or by most interviews, in fact, I could not see the person. In the early days of the C-Realm podcast, the Skype connection, Skype didn't have built-in recording features, so I had to have some sort of jury-rigged, like Solacall, I think was the name of the third-party program that I used for that. And yeah, I didn't see people. But I interviewed a lot of people at conferences and such, and I recognize her, but I don't think I've interviewed her.
Did you say jury-rigged?
Jury-rigged? Jerry-rigged? It's jerry-rigged, isn't it?
It is.
Yes. As in the Krauts.
Exactly.
Gotcha. That's an ethnic slur, but it's a slur against white people, so it's okay.
Well, German white people. Yeah. People that, speak another language.
Yeah. Still whiteys, though. And would-be imperialists. They made a couple of good solid tries at it, yeah.
Under the Kaiserkeit.
All right. What's next?
Well, I thought you wanted to talk to me about why I was going to quote you, or at least a portion of your podcast, which I had requested to do. Because you had talked to Thaddeus Russell, and I had enjoyed some of the things that Thaddeus Russell said, and I said, KMO, can I quote some of the C-Realm? Not the vault or anything like that. I wouldn't break that kind of boundary, but, and you said, sure, let's talk about it. And I said, okay.
All right.
And then, of course, you talked about Bitcoin, which is cool.
Well, okay, so what were Thaddeus and I talking about?
Thaddeus was sharing the monk debate with Steve Bannon and David Frum.
Did you watch that?
And I have not had a chance to do that yet. I have heard the Vault episode where you made some of the salient quotations from Steve Bannon. I was like, ooh, that is interesting.
Yeah. And
I was all set to exert some stuff. I went to the Vault, and then I realized, oh, wait, it's Friday, and I release on Tuesday. And if I were to put all the things I want to put in this episode, it would be next Tuesday, not today. So I decided to cut that part out and save it for later. So it's sadly not in the most recent episode of my podcast, but that's okay.
Yes.
I like where you were going with that. I like your focus on the neoliberals.
So for people who haven't heard the podcast in question, there is a debate. I think it's a twice yearly debate. It takes place in Toronto. It's called the Munk Debate. That's M-U-N-K. It's somebody's last name. It's not like, a monastic dweller monk. And there was one just before the midterm elections. So I guess this would have been 2018, fall of 2018, between David Frum, who is Canadian of birth. I think he's an American citizen now. He is a Republican, but he's of the never Trump variety. And over the past 4 years, any never Trump Republican has been celebrated by the mainstream corporate media and, liberals generally. And he debated Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, who is one of the original founders, or not the founder, but he took over, Breitbart. And yes. When Donald Trump was running for president in 2016 and ran out of donated campaign funds and didn't want to spend his own money, billionaire Robert Mercer came to him and said, hey, I'll fund your campaign, but here, this is Steve Bannon. He's going to craft your campaign messaging. And Steve Bannon crafted a hardcore populist, working people focused populist message, which Donald Trump delivered expertly. And he won the election. And, that populism was entirely absent from his re-election attempt. And, that, among other things, I think is what resulted in President Biden. And definitely Trump's absolute bungling of the whole pandemic response. But
it didn't help.
Did not help. But where were we going with all this? What were we talking about? The monk debate,
neoliberalism,
right.
The populists, debate. The not populists, that kind of divide.
Well, very specifically in the monk debate, though. So it's two Republicans. One's a never Trump Republican who's a Canadian presenting to a Canadian audience. So he's the hometown boy, you know. And then you've got the guy who has been demonized, so thoroughly demonized as just, you know, he's a Nazi. He's just a straight up Nazi. You know, when he's not in his full Klan regalia, Steve Bannon is a Nazi. This is the message that you get from the mainstream corporate media. And then Steve Bannon gets up and he says, the near future of politics is populist, not liberal. The only question is, will it be nationalist populist like Donald Trump, or will it be socialist populist like Bernie Sanders?
Which is a false dichotomy to begin with, but it's a good talking point.
Well, but David Frum, for the next hour and a half, absolutely refused to acknowledge the whole left-wing populism side of that statement. He never once acknowledged that there is such a thing. His whole agenda, his whole plan of attack was just to denigrate Donald Trump for 90 minutes in front of this Canadian audience, which the audience loved it. They ate it up. But in terms of the debate, it's like your opponent said something in the opening statements, which in the full debate, you never once even acknowledged, much less countered. So you lose. You know, you just lose straight up. You lost the debate. But even worse, David Frum, in his very opening statement, he references the burning of Jews, apropos of nothing, just to invoke the Hitler imagery, just to invoke that swastika and paint it on Steve Bannon's face. And Steve Bannon was you haven't seen it yet, so I'll say no more about it, other than he's just, you know, to invoke a German word, such a mensch. He played that so well. He just never let any of this get under his skin. It's amazing to watch. You got to watch it.
And I will. I will get to that. I just, there were a lot of things to do in putting out my own show. But I really like that some people are actually publicly standing up and saying, okay, it's not just left and right, especially when you have the third way left, which is Bill Clinton, Al Gore, Gary Hart, a gazillion others, starting especially with Bill Clinton, who says we need to be more centrist, which was code for we need to suck up for really big money so that we can fund our campaigns and actually win an election. Then they do that, and who gets cut out? Well, starting in 1968, it was unions, people who actually worked for a living. And it was almost inevitable that this would happen because television started to take over as the main driver of political activity. Not just the news, but actually the ads that television was running. They were becoming more and more important for a person to be viable and to get elected. Now, that meant that where you're going to get the money for the elections is going to be not just capped by the amount of money people can donate to their unions. It might be connected to the favors that you can develop for people who will give you even more money by shorting their workers who happen to be in a union. So that was an inevitable rise. I don't know that I don't know if there's a way of reversing it short of just calling nonsense on the whole thing and saying, I'm sorry, we can't have television advertising in politics. And that's me, of course. I have the Attack Ads podcast. So that's what I would say. But yeah, when you have the party of labor not backing labor and the party of the owners of business not backing labor, you have no one backing labor. And so you have a populist that is getting poorer every year. They're seeing much better than any talking heads can tell them. Their paycheck is telling them how they're doing, and it's not doing well in terms of purchase power. And so along come two candidates, Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, who start talking like populists. Mm-hmm. Steve Bannon gave Trump the talking points, and you were right, he executed them very well. Bernie Sanders has been, pretty much invoking a faster talking FDR. And what happened to Bernie? Okay, he's out. Okay, who's in? Oh, wait a minute. That's no change. That's no change at all. From Bill to George to Barack. Let's try something different for a change. And that is never addressed in mainstream politics. Like David Frum, they go to the burnings. They go to the Nazis. They go to everything but the main cause of people's frustration. At least many of the people I have spoken to who really like Bernie and then really like Trump, which I am not a part of, but I'm just saying there are people like that.
Well, I like Bernie better than I like Trump. That's for sure. But I'm, saying that from Vermont, so I would be attacked and killed as soon as I left the studio if I said otherwise. But it's true. I mean, I actually sent money to Sanders' campaign. Hey, Mushroom Mike is in the chat. Talk about VP Harris and Mexico. She around here. So, to say that I'm not the biggest Kamala Harris fan in the world would be a hyperbolic understatement. But she just went to, what was it? What Central American countries did she just go to? Was it Guatemala? Apparently she went there and she got a welcome that she didn't really appreciate. CF Pup is in the chat. He could probably specify. Mike says Bernie is a letdown. I'll amplify that. If Bernie Sanders had repeated his 2016 campaign in 2020, I think he would have won. But in 2016, when Bernie was doing left populism, I mean, that was a really strong message. But in the intervening years, the woke scolds basically cowed him into, becoming just more of a generic lefty liberal.
Becoming more identity related.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I loved this from the 2016 debates when he was on stage with Hillary Clinton and she tried to, tar him as a pro-gun candidate. He said, look, I'm from Vermont. I represent the people of Vermont. The people of Vermont have weapons. That's it. And I so respected that answer. And then, in the intervening 4 years, even our Republican governor here in Vermont has started to champion anti-gun legislation. So, I don't know that Bernie could have held that line. And I don't know that, we have a very divided population. We have people like Colin back there in the control booth. I've shot his AR-15. And then you have, then you have people who, moved here from Boston or Los Angeles or New York. And they have, they bring different values with them. They're also currently taking those values to Texas, but that's another topic. Ikani writes, Bernie did repeat his 2016 campaign. No, he really didn't. But he kind of continues, let the DNC choose their worthless figurehead as a candidate and bow out in a clearly rigged primary. Well, yeah, I mean, there was certainly not a lot of honest reporting or presentation going on in the 2020 Democratic primary.
Well, and there's a good reason for it, and not just for the people that are running the thing, but also for their sponsors. If Bernie got in, profits would suffer because he would impose things that would hurt the people with enough money to pay more in taxes. He would impose restrictions on doing some of the things that are very, very profitable, like, I don't know, Elon Musk gaming Bitcoin, if you will. There's all kinds of things you can attack, and if you promote labor, you're going to take money from somewhere. And unlike what most people say, it's like it's not going to make necessarily the prices rise, but it sure might make the people that don't do the work a little poorer.
And believe it or not, I'm about to quote some Fox News here. This is in response to Mushroom Mike. So Kamala Harris's diplomatic trip to Latin America gets off to a bumpy start as plane forced to turn around. Vice President Kamala Harris' diplomatic trip to Guatemala and Mexico got off to a bumpy start Sunday after her plane was forced to return to Joint Base Andrews in Maryland about 25 minutes after it had taken off. Okay, well, that's not particularly important. Let's get down to the actual trip. Harris later arrived in Guatemala's capital, where she was greeted by Guatemala's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Pedro Brolo. A video shared by Sanders on Twitter shows the vice president and Brolo waving to a crowd upon arrival. Harris' two-day trip to Central America, her first foreign trip as vice president, is part of her effort to lead diplomatic talks to tackle what the administration describes as the root causes of the crisis at the southern border. President Joe Biden appointed Harris in March to lead the diplomatic outreach, just as the administration was dealing with a massive surge of immigration at the border. Harris has since come under criticism for not having visited the border. Saturday marked the 74th day that Harris has neither traveled to the U.S. border communities nor held a news conference in connection with her duties as manager of the administration's response to the border crisis. In response to that criticism, Harris and her office have claimed that her focus was always on the root causes of migration, not on conditions at the U.S. border towns. But her critics have argued that by visiting U.S. border communities, Harris would gain important insights on how the migrant crisis has been affecting those areas in terms of crime, business, and strain on law enforcement personnel and resources. And that's all. It doesn't say anything about what happened in Guatemala. Although I've heard that her trip and her negotiations on it did not go well. But Mushroom Mike, I'm afraid I don't have the details of her trip at the ready. And I'll freely admit that I think the election of Joe Biden has certainly worked on me in that I just don't pay attention to the Biden administration. And in particular, it's so easy to ignore Kamala Harris. I just find her so disagreeable to look at and listen to that it's no effort whatsoever to just ignore her entirely. So I have no impression whatsoever of how she has done, what her performance as vice president has been. But what is a vice president supposed to do anyway? I mean, it's large.
The president of the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, that was to give a counterbalance to the president. In the old days, and I mean 1796 to 1790 something on, that meant that everybody would vote for president. Nobody would vote for vice president. And then the Electoral College would meet, and the first place person got president, and the second place person got vice president. That's why the vice president is president of the Senate. It was to be the rival to the president. They wanted a leader without a lot of power. You had to build consensus if you wanted to pass laws. Then 1800 comes along, Thomas Jefferson, Aaron Burr, and John Adams tie. It's a three-way deadlock that goes on for a long time. That's when they start realizing, this system may not be working very well. And thereafter, they went with a party ticket system, with the president and vice president being elected together. So other than that, the vice president does whatever the president wants, or stays out of sight, which might be what the president wants. I don't know.
Well, in this
Depends on the president.
in this instance, I would think that the president himself is going to stay out of sight. And so you need somebody to be the effective, president. I would think that would be Kamala Harris. But as I say, it's so easy to tune the whole show out now.
Well, I didn't even know that you went overseas, so there you go.
Not sure Latin America counts as overseas, but yeah, I get you. Did you know that Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty have left Rising?
I did know that, yes.
Yeah. Have you seen any of their new show?
I have not.
Have you seen any of Rising without them?
Maybe an hour or so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I liked what they said, but I have to say that after about an hour, I started hearing the same message again and again, and I decided, let's move somewhere else. Let's get a different message. So that was just me.
Well, Ryan Grimm is now playing Crystal Ball. He's the lefty. And what's her name? Blonde girl. Oh, shoot. Don't mean to disrespect her. I like what she does, but she's the new Sagar. She's the right winger.
Mm-hmm.
And the larger message is pretty much the same. It is populist left and populist right perspectives on the news, which most people just get filtered through the neoliberal corporate media.
Well, I don't know exactly how much of their material they wrote themselves and how much they were given. I'm sure they have a writing staff, just because, isn't it a daily show?
It is. It's a 5-day a week. Actually, it's a 7-day a week show, but they record the weekend stuff on Friday.
Right. So they have a writing staff. So that's probably the only way they're going to get the content out there. So it doesn't really matter who reads it.
I think they always wrote their own monologues, and the rest of the show wasn't scripted. But Ben Rubber says, love your history bits, Jim D.
Well, thank you, Benny.
Who prefers to be called
accurate.
He prefers to be called Benjamin. But I've been calling him Ben Rubber because that's what's on screen, man. So
my apologies, Benjamin.
Yeah. No, that you would only know that if you had been in the real-time epistemology club room on Clubhouse on Sunday.
Ah.
Yeah.
I saw the invite, but I don't. And I thought about getting a phone that could do that, but it's like, I'm old, I put my phone in the toaster and walk away.
You don't have a smartphone?
I do. I just don't utilize it to its fullest potential.
Mm-hmm.
I just yesterday I was sitting about and going, my batteries died on my little noisemaker, my MP3 player. It's like, you know what? I can always stream this like a human in the 21st century. And so, okay, I will call up a podcast that I listen to. It's like, oh, wait a minute. I could go to the Monk debate and listen to the Monk debate on the way home. All right. So I turned on the mobile data for the first time in 5 years. And I came up with the Monk debate. Oh, okay. And 10 pictures of backyard barbecue grills popped up in the bottom. It's like, oh, these must be the ads. Oh, last weekend I brought my phone when we went across the street to the neighbors to a grill, and we were saying, oh, that's a nice new grill. Hey, is the burgers on the grill? Is the hot dogs on the grill? Grill, 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 grill. I'll bet my phone heard all that, and now I've connected it to the people that are selling ads and using the edge computing where my words are parsed into little sellable portions of my personality. Suddenly everyone says, oh, he's looking for a grill. And I decided to turn off mobile roaming and just drive home with the window open, and I shouted at everybody as I drove home. That's what happened. As soon as I can figure out a viable way of just stopping the ads on my phone, I'll be a member of the new community of technology-loving everybody's.
Well, there are no ads on Clubhouse. So you can come chat with us on Clubhouse on Sunday, and there would be no barbecue grills pitched at you by the algorithms. I might just suggest one or two because, the algorithms are contacting me at all hours saying, Jim D, he really needs a barbecue grill, and you should show him this model.
Well, I would accept a recommendation of grill from you, KMO, provided, you use it and things like that. But it might cost a little much to get it from Vermont.
And, as an apartment dweller, I don't actually do much grilling. I go to Alex's house. Alex runs the TV station here, and he's got a grill. He's good with it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, one day I'll join you on Clubhouse. It'll happen.
All right. So, Mushroom Mike in the comments, maybe you could tell us your opinion about Kamala Harris and her visit to your country. And if you like, I could even share the Zoom call details with you. He says, maybe promising more than he can actually deliver. Let's see. How can I do that? Let's go to participants. No, I already had participants. Invite. There we go. But I can't copy from one computer to the other. Let's see. But I'm sure I have Mushroom Mike's email, so I can share via Gmail. So while I'm messing around with this, have we covered everything that you wanted to say about the Thaddeus Russell conversation?
I believe so. Yeah, I was really more focused on the Monk debate and on Steve Bannon using terms like corporatism. Yeah, which of course was
and working class.
I think that was. I'm sorry.
And working class.
Working class.
Yeah.
Well, corporatism was a bigger one. That one was coined by Mussolini in the Italian Encyclopedia or Encyclopedia Italiana or something like that in 1922. In fact, I believe the quote went, corporatism. In our description, fascism would be more akin to corporatism, with a stronger nationalistic bent to it. And that was why corporatism being mentioned by Bannon was actually significant.
Ah.
So the other thing is, when he says, look, you're either going to have a nationalist or a socialist populism, no! That assumes that socialism is somehow international. And I know there are a lot of people that call themselves international socialists, but that doesn't mean anything. You can have socialism within a national boundary. So, again, false dichotomy, Steve Bannon. Of course, Trump didn't do anything with it, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, are you, though, collapsing the... Mike, I'm told that we only have 4 minutes left. It's not really enough time to get you in here on the call, but we can do that next week if you like. But are you saying that there is this distinction that he's drawing between different varieties of populism is a distinction without a difference?
Even worse, it's false. It's completely false. You can have a populism that leans toward a socialist agenda. You can have a populism that leans toward a nationalist agenda. And you can have a socialism that leads to a national socialist agenda. You can have all manner of mixing there. The two are not separated somehow magically in the minds of anybody Because let's face it, if you ask 3 people what socialism is, you get 5 answers. Socialism is not a defined construct. It's fungible and malleable enough to play with all kinds of permutation. You can have private ownership of businesses and still have socialist instincts in the social democratic fashion. You can have all manner of stuff. So, yeah, he opens with a false dichotomy, but since Frum didn't even touch on it, it's probably a moot point.
So, see, to me, it seems accurate to say that Donald Trump was expressing a populist message in 2016, and that Bernie Sanders was as well.
Yep.
So the next step is, I guess, the one where I'm a little fuzzy. Are you saying that there's no difference between Trump and Sanders, that they were articulating the identical vision?
They were making appeals to the same demographic, and they were proposing different ways of appealing to that demographic. So they were both fighting for the same electorate. They were, Sanders would have people who have more money taxed more, and Trump would do something.
Nothing in particular, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Trump was very fuzzy about his promises, but he said them in a really catchy way. And, drain the swamp did not mean drain liberalism in democracy. It meant all of the things that are crushing the middle class and the lower middle class. It included the Republican Party in that. And he was very clear on that, which was an appealing message. As somebody I work with said, who was a big Bernie supporter and later went to Trump, he said, my vote for Trump was a hand grenade thrown to fuck up the system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can respect that.
Speaking of David Frum, I heard David Frum, he was a guest on Sam Harris's podcast soon after Trump's election. And David Frum said that he had been hearing from Republicans who were saying, Trump's not our candidate, he's our murder weapon.
That's appropriate too,
Yep. So,
and he actually did a fine job at that.
The thing is, he doesn't have an ideological commitment to anything.
Oh, no, completely. And I saw that immediately. So I was like, okay, well, he's not my candidate, but I can see his appeal.
So he might do something you like at one point, but you can't take that as any sort of indicator that he's going to continue to do things that you like.
Stopped clock territory. Exactly right. Yeah. He's right twice a day. Whoopee.
Well, hey, Jim, I think we're down to the last minute or so. Say something funny to take us out.
Spatula.
I like it.
Made you laugh.
All right. Spatula, and we're out.